I flew over my house a couple of weeks ago. Massive. Massive. Filled the sky, it did. Made the earth move. Yeah, piece of kit. It's the Vulcan.
This is the inside story about one of Britain's best-loved aeroplanes and its final flying days. The Avro Vulcan was the plane that protected the nation, a Cold War icon designed to launch a massive nuclear retaliation at the Soviet Union. Today, only one airworthy Vulcan survives, but now too expensive to maintain. This technological masterpiece is about to be grounded forever.
Well, it's 30 years past retirement, so we can't say with 100% confidence that it's going to run swimmingly. We're in unknown territory.
Towards me, Guy.
Guy Martin has been granted privileged access to help prepare the aircraft for its most ambitious mission ever. A 1,000-mile farewell tour of Britain. Guy will also learn about the impossible decisions the Vulcan's elite pilots faced.
One of the things you had to come to terms with is that it may well be that you result in the death of hundreds of thousands of people on the ground.
He'll experience the rare honour of flying in a Vulcan formation.
I reckon I could have jumped onto the Vulcan. That's how close it was.
And he'll become one of the few civilians to ever take control of a military aircraft.
You have control. Thank you. I think that was a little bit more than a wheelie.
Stand by for broadcast. Stand by for broadcast.
Air raid warning red. I say again, air raid warning red.
Vulcan nuclear bombers were scrambled from places like this. Robin Hood Airport near Doncaster is a former RAF base. Of the 136 Vulcans built, only one is left flying. This is where she lives, in her original 1950s Cold War hangar.
Oh, we love a new project. We love a new job. We love a new job.
Designation XH558. Name, the Spirit of Great Britain.
That's a lot of playing.
This is the first time Guy's seen a Vulcan up close.
Look at that. Just massive. It's the size of the sky. 45 tonne as it sits here. 93 tonne when it's full of fuel. 14 fuel tanks in that. 14 fuel tanks. No, it's quick. Nearly, not quite, but nearly the speed of sound. It's like 700 odd mile an hour. That's a lot of plane.
The Vulcan was a remarkable leap forward. The concept was dreamt up in 1947 by Roy Chadwick, whose other celebrated bomber, the Lancaster, entered service just 5 years earlier.
Going from a Lancaster bomber to this in the space of 5 years is like nothing. It's like it's nothing like. You might say that it's a quantum leap. I wouldn't use that word. I haven't thought of the word yet that I'd use. But this is just, one of those moments. Who's that? Who come up with that? It's one of those moments. Look at it, hey? Handled like a fighter, but then could drop massive nuclear bombs.
There are 4 busy months of air displays to go before 558's final flight, and Guy starts work by reporting to his new boss.
We've heard a lot about Taff. He's Welsh, isn't he? He's Welsh. I should have known that.
Kevin Taff Stone is 558's chief engineer.
How you doing?
All right, Taff. Good to meet you. I'm Guy.
Pleased to meet you.
So what's the plan then?
This is the man responsible for keeping the Vulcan flying way past her sell-by date.
So if a wing dropped off this, it's your fault?
Yes, in the court of law I could be culpable for it.
Oh, heck.
And go to prison.
It's on his head that he'd go down for 5 years.
And so before Guy is let anywhere near 558,
So we are actually on a live, active airfield.
Taff insists on some essential training.
Health and safety induction.
I am a first aider, so if there's any problems, I can deal with all that lot. And obviously, we don't get drinking drunk.
No, I'm not very good at that, boy.
But that doesn't matter. If it means to get the chance to work on a Vulcan, then I'm all for it.
Taff is a highly experienced former RAF engineer. He worked on Vulcans for 30 years and flew with the Red Arrows as the back seat technician.
They are live ejection seats. So if you...
558 is his pride and joy.
She's temperamental, high maintenance, but they're going to do live her. It's a proper engineering aircraft. There's no little black boxes to tell you what's wrong there. You get to know and feel the aircraft. That's our inductions.
With the induction over, work can begin.
Yeah.
Take the weights, up you go.
The first job is a big one, testing 558's engines.
Go on, what's happening?
Taff enlists Guy's help for the first crucial stage of the operation.
One handle, 6 doors. Away we
Right,
go.
I'll get cracking then.
Come on. That's it.
That's it, excuse me. Ooh. 6 ton a door?
Yep. It's filled with ballast, the bomb blasts.
Is that right?
Yeah. That'll do you, Guy.
This servicing procedure is performed every 20 flying hours and has been carried out since the Vulcan entered service 59 years ago. Today's the final time it will ever be done while she's flying. The companies that sign off 558's annual safety checks have run out of the necessary 1950s expertise. So at the end of the year, the permit to fly will not be renewed.
I'm not particularly looking forward to it. You always want to be the best and you want to keep it going right to the end. And then you're thinking, oh, but I don't want it to be the end. You just want to keep it going for as long as physically possible.
That feels like falling in a chasm. It's built to fly, and yet they're getting rid of the best British bomber ever built. Something wrong somewhere there.
Okay. This is a jet engine to start the jet engines.
We're clear behind Sam.
Let's start full.
And Startmaster's on.
Ignition is on.
Okay, air's on 4.
Buttons in.
Once started, each engine is checked at full power. Sucking in 100 kilograms of air a second creates the Vulcan's legendary howl.
Ground runs went well. Shutting down, 0 fuel.
Take some beating that, boys. Take some beating.
Thanks everyone, all complete, everything went well.
All right, the ground's shaking, but as well as the ground, it's like my innards are moving inside me. Oh. One of them, I've never felt anything like that. But yes, test passed. We're one step nearer to a final flight. It's going to be emotional.
This breathtaking aircraft was designed and built entirely in Great Britain. It was the first British machine of the atomic age. And yet it started as a humble doodle on a newspaper. When World War II ended, the Cold War began. In the face of an increasingly belligerent Soviet Union, Labour Prime Minister Clement Attlee commissioned an atomic bomb program to act as Britain's nuclear deterrent. This left his Ministry of Supply with the problem of how to deliver that deterrent. They tendered for an aircraft capable of carrying a 5-ton nuclear payload to Moscow in less than 3 hours, flying twice as high as anything that had gone before, in order to avoid Russian defences. AV Rowe of Manchester rose to the challenge. Technical director Roy Chadwick realised conventional straight wings wouldn't be up to the job. Instead, he suggested a radical triangular delta wing.
Obviously, it's great for lift because we've got a massive amount of wing area. It makes the whole fuselage very stiff because it's all joined together in one lump, and we've got loads of area for storing petrol. Or fuel, we'll call it fuel.
Chadwick's original doodles became designs for a plane built around a bomb. The five-man crew were almost an afterthought.
You need to have a look in here. Is there any light? Will this camera be able to see that? She's cosy. She's cosy, mate. Right. Yeah, what we've got here is that's the pilot, number one pilot. That's the co-pilot. This is me on the stairs, and there is no space. You could not swing cats around in here. Here we have AEO, Air Electronics Officer.
He looks after all the plane's electrical gubbins, and there is a lot of electrics on this. Nav plotter, he looks after where the plane's going.
And here we have Nav Radar.
He looks after dropping the bombs.
See this in the corner? See that? Manual bomb dropper, eh? That is a powerful button. So you're thinking, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, and that's your soup warmer that took 90 minutes to warm. It recirculates the air in the engine bay to warm that up. 90 minutes! You've broken me! You've broken me! But she is busy. I'll press the button.
The preparations for Vulcan 558's final flying days are underway, but the next task Guy will face could put the entire plane's airworthiness at risk. XH-558 is the last airworthy example of the iconic Vulcan bomber. But now this 55-year-old aircraft has reached retirement age. At the end of a busy flying season, she'll embark on an ambitious 1,000-mile farewell tour before being permanently grounded. Guy Martin has been allowed to join the select engineering team who maintain the aircraft.
Down a little bit, not too much.
That's it, that's it. She's in. No messing, right? No messing.
His little puppy dog here, he's off, isn't he? He ain't got his hand in grease, he's not happy. Same as all of us.
We love it.
Guy's working on the most blessed of all the Vulcans. 558 is lucky to be the last one flying. In the early 1980s, the Vulcan fleet had reached the end of its serviceable life and was sliced up for scrap. But 558 was given a stay of execution when she was bought by a private enthusiast.
In the House of Commons this afternoon, Mr. Jonathan Aiken will announce the sale of the Vulcan XH-558 to Mr. David Walton.
Do you know how much he paid? Got the original mag and the original advert. Anyway, in '92 he paid £25,000. You know, you do think that initially, God, £25,000, get a Vulcan bomber for £25,000, great. But then you've got to think, how are you going to explain that to the missus?
558 was now a museum piece. But 5 years later, in 1997, a Vulcan superfan had other ideas.
I said to myself, I'm damned if this aircraft will never fly again. Sends a shiver down my spine even now.
Robert Plemming, keen air cadet, nuclear physicist taught by Stephen Hawking, and pioneer of computer networking at the start of the World Wide Web, gave up his executive salary to try and restore 558 to flight.
It was an immense personal risk. Some of my old friends of the time thought I was mad, which, to be honest, was one possible explanation. I regard this as the Everest of aircraft restorations. It must be. And I have to admit, at times I was wondering whether or not I was going to be Mallory or Hillary. I do think there's an engineer's gut feel that I certainly feel. From the very earliest days, I was convinced that we could return the aircraft to fly based on instinct rather than actual firm knowledge. We thought we'd need about $1.5 million to restore the aircraft. That proved to be a huge underestimate.
The project was on the brink of financial ruin, and as a last resort, Plemming spent 3 solid months preparing a submission to the Heritage Lottery Fund.
And this is it. This is 2 volumes worth 110,000 words of what is needed to make a successful Lottery Fund grant application. A pretty reasonable novel.
They were awarded £2.7 million. Public donations more than doubled that figure, and in 2007, after 100,000 man-hours, the world's most complex restoration was rolled out of her hangar. 558 was towed past her adoring public, taxied to the runway, made the familiar hull, reached 116 miles per hour, and flew for the first time in 14 years. The plane has been a star of air shows ever since.
There has been a cost. I guess I could have earned very much more money than I've earned. I'm not sure whether or not the stress has caused medical problems or whatever, but there have been a few milestone medical issues along the way. Undoubtedly worth it, no question. We've given so much pleasure to so many people.
It is a dear job to run. How much does it cost? I don't want to, you don't really ask, but I thought I should ask.
The figure that we have had to raise year on year is about £2.25 million.
£2.25 million?
Well, we can take the aircraft to the people. We're seen by somewhere between 2 and 3 million people a year. And in my head, that's a pound a smile.
The Vulcan is funded largely by public money and displays for around 40 hours a year. The maintenance alone to keep the plane safe runs up an annual bill of £1 million. None of the servicing jobs on the Vulcan are straightforward. Checking for airframe fatigue requires the plane to be jacked up off the ground. But lowering it back down again is one of the riskiest procedures the team carry out. Guy will have to pay attention to everything Crew Chief Taff tells him.
Right then, let's get some work done.
It sounds a bit dramatic that we say if you let one jack down too fast, you write the whole plane off. But that is the case.
Once the wing supports have been removed, the aircraft is left sitting on hydraulic jacks. 45 tons of priceless aeroplane is balanced on just 4 small jacking points.
If you come down incorrectly and it slips off, then it could completely ruin the aircraft, or you could twist the airframe.
Oh, heck.
There are no spare airframes, so a twist here would leave the aircraft permanently grounded. Safely jacking a Vulcan has always relied on close teamwork. 558's airworthiness is on the line. So Guy will work alongside former RAF technician Ray Watts.
We keep our eye on Mark.
Yes.
So our two come down together.
Yes.
And the guys come down together and we just stop.
Yeah.
And basically, if any doubt and you're not happy, we shout stop.
Yeah.
And all 4 of us will stop.
Yeah.
I cut my teeth on these when I was 18 to 22. It's a bond that stays with you. It's going to be a sad day when the last flight goes. You'll see a lot of people upset. And I don't really want to talk about that day.
Okay, all together, down 1.
Guy slowly releases the valve, and the painstaking procedure begins.
You think that's pace or a bit?
That's fine, so we just keep our eye on that one as well, just watch them both.
Taff was sat in the cockpit watching a plumb bob. So Taff knows if it's back end too low or front end too low or cross cornered, you know, that's when it's going to stress the airframe, you see, so everyone lets the jacks down evenly.
Okay, fronts only down one.
Fronts only down one.
Okay, stop.
You can hear it creaking. Yeah, the airframe creaking whole. What's that?
Nobody panics, and Taff guides the fractional correction that's necessary.
Front right only down one.
The plumb bob returns to centre.
Stop.
These boys have done this before. We're in good hands.
"35 minutes after starting the process, the Vulcan has descended 18 inches and is safely back on solid ground.
Weight off.
That's it, we're done. You've now took the Vulcan off jacks, mate.
Spot on, mate. I'm impressed that they trusted me with the knob on the jack. But he was all right, we got it done.
Thank you, cheers. Cheers, boy.
The Vulcan's radical design relied on a number of complex electrical systems to help it fly. Although commonplace today, when the first prototype was built in the 1950s, they were completely untested.
We've got no fancy computer programs back then to tell us if it's going to fly or if it's going to do this or do that. We need to build one and then get a pilot daft enough to fly it.
That man was the debonair wing commander, Rowley Falk.
Rowley, of course, was always dressed immaculately in his grey pinstripe suit. And he said an aircraft should be as clean as a car. It shouldn't be necessary to put on protective clothing.
In August 1952, Falk stepped forward to see if a full-size Vulcan would fly. It had taken 5 years to reach this point. Avro designer Stuart Davis had developed the Delta concept and witnessed the maiden voyage with his daughter.
I was 12 years old, and down we go to stand with the other bystanders. Great anticipation.
Clear to taxi, runway 26.
He teased us a bit because he took it on 1 or 2 little test runs down the runway before he actually did anything.
698 Woodford Tower, cleared for takeoff.
And then this beautiful bird took off into the sky, and we all thought, wow.
It stopped the whole of Cheshire, the traffic, everything, ground to a standstill, because they'd never seen anything like this at all. They thought it was only about a space. It came over the new assembly here at Woodford, and he rolled it like a fighter. We couldn't believe it, that such a massive aircraft could be rolled, and he smashed all the glass in the roof of the new assembly, and it was like that for a long time, until the roof was redone. I've never forgot that. All the workforce thought it was terrific.
He did put the aircraft through a lot of manoeuvres. They weren't always manoeuvres that he had been asked to put it through. And I can remember my father saying he shouldn't have done that. But it just shows how good the aircraft was.
Rowley, of course, was a superb pilot, but being a superb pilot doesn't really ensure that the aircraft is ideal. It's absolutely vital that the aircraft can be handled by the worst pilot in the squadron, if you like, and not only the best.
So before the plane was handed over to the RAF, brave pilots like Tony Blackman had to test it to the limit.
In the Vulcan, it was always particularly exciting because you would lose control at the maximum speed. The aircraft would just try and dive for home.
Avro spent 4 years refining the design, using as much cutting-edge technology as possible, from analysing shockwaves in wind tunnels to early computers.
Calculations which would have taken a month can now be condensed into a matter of minutes.
That's what was so amazing about the Vulcan. In spite of this very unfortunate handling, we managed to make it into a very effective bomber.
The Vulcan entered service in 1956, But its smooth shape influenced the design of stealth bombers some 30 years later, and its Rolls-Royce Olympus engines became the heart of Concorde.
My father was extremely proud of it, and every time I've seen it fly since, tears come to my eyes. I think of my father.
Few machines inspire emotions like the Vulcan, as Guy's about to find out for himself, with a rare chance to fly alongside it in formation.
We have visual.
Guy Martin is about to see one of the final displays of the last airworthy Vulcan, the legendary nuclear bomber.
Can you see the sound? See the sound? It makes that noise between 85 and 97% throttle. They didn't design it to do that. It just happened that it's the air rushing through the engines, down the tunnels. You know, it's like a resonance. It's like blowing over the top of a milk bottle. I don't know if you can hear that. It just opened her up there. The howl, you feel the howl off that.
The only thing better than experiencing a Vulcan display from the ground is to watch it from the sky. The Blades aerobatic team have flown alongside 558 on numerous occasions and are marking this, their final display together, by inviting a Spitfire to join the formation. And Guy.
All right, mate.
He'll be flown by Miles Garland, one of the Red Arrow's youngest ever squadron leaders.
Don't be shy, my mother wasn't.
So what's the craziest thing you've done?
What's the craziest thing I've done?
Yeah.
Just seconds after takeoff, Guy's within a wingspan of the Vulcan.
It's a bold statement, that, but I don't think there's anyone that's got any nearer to a flying Vulcan than me and Miles. I reckon I could have jumped onto the Vulcan like a bloody... You know, I could have... that's how close it was. It was going that slow, it looked like it was going to fall out of the sky. But it wasn't, we was doing 180 miles an hour.
Of it in relation to the Spitfire.
The Spitfire is 20 years older than the Vulcan, yet is still nowhere near retirement, which begs an obvious question.
There's a load of Spitfires flying. Why can't the Vulcan carry on flying? She's not as simple as that, mate. Because the Spitfire, it's cables, rods, linkages, you could build it in your shed. But the Vulcan could not be further from that.
It has 14 miles of cabling, more than 100,000 parts, and with no manual overrides, if there's a system failure, it can't be glided to the ground. With the engineering firms who guarantee her safety now running out of the old-fashioned skills needed to support her, 558 has to be retired.
Vulcan's going to accelerate away now, Guy. You might want to film it. Perfect. Look at him go. Hey. Yeah, that's the flying with the Vulcan complete. Mega. Perfect, guys. Thank you very much.
I'm probably the last person that's going to get as near as that to a flying Vulcan. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I know, message. You've done that before.
Oh. Well, that's never going to happen again, is it? I've just all went to mush. I've just been sat the whole time, just gazing at the thing, just gazing at it. I'm still shaking my head. You give me a minute. Give me a minute. Have a cup of tea.
She may be a crowd-pleasing display aircraft these days, but the Vulcan was designed to be a killing machine. At the height of the Cold War, it was a linchpin of Bomber Command's QRA. QRA stood for Quick Reaction Alert, a special group poised to rapidly deliver a massive nuclear retaliation in the event of a Soviet attack. It included 9 Vulcan squadrons. At any one time, there were 45 men on standby, sleeping close to their aircraft.
Every Vulcan squadron had to have a plane loaded with a nuclear weapon, ready to go at a moment's notice, 24 hours a day.
QRA existed between 1961 and 69.
The type of call-out you'd get would be, attention, attention, this is the bomber controller.
Attention, attention, this is the bomber controller, authentication, Whiskey 9 Juliet.
Whenever that call-out occurred, it certainly sent the heart racing.
We tended to sleep in our flying suits. The essence of the thing was to be able to move quickly and to get your aircraft quickly.
We knew if we were ever scrambled, it only meant one thing, and that was missiles incoming to the UK. We also knew by the time that we probably got east to Norway, there wouldn't be much left of the UK, so it was a case of we're going to do to them what they have just done to us.
One bomb can destroy utterly one city.
No other servicemen were entrusted with as much responsibility as the crews of the QRA.
I've got a quote here from Nigel Baldwin, who was a Vulcan captain. Vulcan captain? Let me read on. I tremble at the responsibility I had. I signed for my first nuclear weapon when I was 23 years old. It staggers me now. Staggers him now. Respect.
One of the things you had to come to terms with is the fact that it may well be that you will result in the death of hundreds of thousands of people on the ground. Not a nice thought, and it's somewhere I wouldn't like to have gone. But if I had to have done it, I would have done it.
Most of our spare time on the squadron, when you weren't flying, you were in the vault, as it was called, studying your target.
Only that crew knew what that target was, and you knew it inside out. And the latest intelligence would reflect where the latest missiles and guns were going to be placed, so you tried to avoid them before you even got airborne. You would plan a route.
The description of the targets were always army camps, airfields, railway sidings. It never mentioned ever anything about the public who might be there.
15 miles below target. On, switch on.
And it was only when I met a Russian girl later, when I'd left the RAF, and I found she came from my primary target, that the true enormity of it actually struck home to me. I was so shaken that I couldn't continue to talk to her, and I had to walk away, and it really, really upset me. I think in some ways I'm almost ashamed of it. The realisation of the massive responsibility that we had, and I don't want to think of it anymore.
The crews tasked with dropping a nuclear weapon had unique training. Pilots were told to fly with an eye patch, so that if they were blinded by a nuclear flash, they still had one eye that would work. Instructions for what to do after dropping a bomb varied.
We've got a quotation from Andrew Brooke. He was a Vulcan pilot, and he was told, and I was just saying, he was told, keep flying east, and hoped to settle down with a nice, warm Mongolian woman. Nothing to come back to.
The closest the world ever came to nuclear war was the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962.
We delay the start of tonight's Late Show to bring you a CBS News special report.
There is not a great deal of reason for optimism tonight.
The Soviet Union secretly installed 36 nuclear missiles on communist-led Cuba, easily within striking distance of the USA. America asked Britain to ready its jets on the 26th of October, Black Saturday.
We'd been watching it on black and white television, so we weren't surprised when the front doorbell went and there was an RAF policeman there, and he said, "Sir, you are required immediately." And I said to my wife, "Look, I'm dashing off. It's obviously got to do with this wretched Cuban business. If you hear us take off, I want you to get the kids in the car and then drive up to your brother in the Isle of Skye. You should be okay there." And then I had to dash off. I only said that really to reassure myself, I suppose. When we drove out to the aircraft, we saw that the bomb was loaded. This nasty thing. And then we just sat there, only a few yards from the aircraft. We were waiting for the scramble message to come in, which would have meant we'd have to deliver the bomb.
Britain did nothing to keep QRA's readiness to take off a secret from Soviet intelligence.
We left the window open, so to speak, so they could see us and hear us. We wanted the Soviet Union to know what we were doing, and they would know then that we were serious. That's how the deterrent works.
11th-hour negotiations brought the crisis to a peaceful end. The nuclear deterrent had been tested to the limit.
Funnily enough, doesn't seem all that long ago.
Back at 558's hangar, the maintenance work continues. Guy's been entrusted with a turbine inspection deep inside the air intakes. It can be filthy work. Guy's following in the knee steps of the old engineers who were nicknamed Sutties.
I thought I was going to have to get doused up in duck oil before I get waxed up and get naked to get in, but actually, it's all right, there is plenty of room. You don't know what's going to crack next or what's going to drop to bits next, so you just got to have a keen eye.
Any nicks in the blades, that's what we're checking for. Can you see what I'm looking at? The torch. If there's been any rivets go through, or birds go through, or small children go through, it'd mark the blades. You hear that noise? Just the blades are loose in the root. When the thing gets to temperature and at speed, the centrifugal force holds them tight. That's how they should be. If they're not rattling, we've got a problem.
Thursday morning, sat on an air intake in a Vulcan, eh?
The best mechanic's job. The best mechanic's job, eh? I don't want to scratch anything, but... Spot on. Everything in order, as far as I can see. We'll get cracking.
Done here. It's one of the tasks that I've done.
No task is complete until Crew Chief Taff records it on the Civil Aviation Authority's Certificate of Work.
If you'd like to sign for a physical task on this aircraft.
Spot on. Great job, mate. Thank you very much.
That's you on the official paperwork, so I know who to blame.
It's all in hand. Don't worry.
558 is fit to fly for now, but there's one safety aspect that has beleaguered the Vulcan through its entire life. Whilst the pilot and co-pilot up front had ejector seats, the design couldn't accommodate them for the crew in the back. Although there were no crashes during active service, there were several training accidents.
It was so difficult to get out of the Vulcan if you had to in a hurry. There was some nasty accidents which involved pilots getting out and rear crew not getting out. I lost quite a few friends that way. If they'd had ejection seats, they would have survived.
one of the first things we did was to say to our pilots, please guys, no mock heroics. If you've lost control of the aircraft, go. There's nothing you can do to help us. Go.
They didn't fit ejector seats to the rear crew, but what they did do for us is the seats would swivel, and then we have what's known as a seat assister cushion.
Right, I get into that position there. I pull this lever on the side, which inflates that cushion there, like a whoopee cushion.
And you cannot fight it. If it goes off, it ejects you towards the entrance hole. Of course, there is a disadvantage that if you've got the undercarriage down, then just aft of the escape hatch is the nose wheel.
That front wheels are steering at me.
It's not going to do your dentures too much good.
I've got to somehow get down there and jump that way while avoiding that, while trying to pull my parachute. You what?
The way you had to go down then is you went down with your legs spread apart, so your feet slide down the outside of the hatch onto the hydraulic jacks, and then you reach over and catch the starboard jack.
Starboard? What side is starboard?
And you swing yourself out the side of the door.
Hang on, I've got my shoe caught on there.
Hopefully to go down the side of the nose wheel.
I've got... And now pull my parachute and try and miss that.
Even if the nose wheel wasn't down, an emergency exit was perilously dangerous.
Not terribly satisfactory, and not a lot of people have actually got out.
15 Vulcan crashes, all in all, and in 10 of those crashes, all of the boys coming out that way died. 10 of the crashes. Odds aren't very good. I can see why.
One rear crew member who had to contemplate those odds was Peter West.
I heard this bang. Well, it was a bird strike. The two starboard engines burst into flame, and for the first and only time in my RAF career of nearly 35 years, I pressed the key and sent a Mayday message.
The plane was 558, the Vulcan guys working on.
People have said to me, oh God, 558 nearly killed you. On the contrary, 558 kept us alive. That aircraft with a big hole in the starboard wing stayed airborne.
Vulcan crews have always been considered amongst the elite. And next Guy will discover if he's made of the same stuff, as he's put in the cockpit and handed the controls. There are 2 months left before Vulcan 558's 1,000-mile farewell tour of Britain, with the team confident the airframe is holding up well. But she's 55 years old, and with no other Vulcan having flown for so long, the team never know when a problem might arise. And on the 5th of September, one did. At the controls that day was Virgin Atlantic airline pilot Bill Perrins.
We performed a couple of air displays. We were preparing to land at Prestwick Airport up in Scotland, and we selected the undercarriage down, and it didn't fully come down.
A plane spotter's footage captured the faulty nose wheel. A safe landing looked impossible, and with fuel running out, the airport initiated its emergency protocols. Phil Davis was in the back of the Vulcan, working as the air electronics officer.
We believe that some air had got in the system, so the nose wheel came down to about 70 degrees.
We called if there was any British military aircraft around. The RAF scrambled a Spitfire over to us.
Can you give me your speed, please? I'm just on your right-hand side.
The Spitfire came up, flew alongside and confirmed that the nose wheel was in fact not fully down.
It looks like it hasn't descended fully forward. Thanks so much.
With more than 14,000 flying hours to his name, Bill Perrins could draw on vast experience.
But we have a bunch of procedures that we go through, used a little bit of old-fashioned airmanship where we thought outside the box, wobbled the airplane around a bit to see if we could persuade the undercarriage to lower under gravity.
Do you want me to see if there's any doors in the way and just get a little bit closer? Please do.
The last resort is to fire high-pressure nitrogen into the hydraulic system. It creates such force that it has to be done well clear of any people or buildings.
We've just kind of settled to go out to sea to blow the gear down, and suddenly I think the old girl decided that she didn't want us to do that, and with a big clunk the nose wheel went down and locked.
Vulcan runway 30, clear to land.
The nose wheel was down, but nobody could be sure it would take the strain of the landing. Perrins kept the nose in the air until the last possible second to try and make touchdown as gentle as possible. She'd made it, and for the pilot at least, it's definitely time to retire 558.
Personally, I think it's exactly the right time to knock it on the head and park it up. Certainly when I reach the same sort of comparable age, I don't want somebody to make me do lots of things I don't want to do. I just intend to sit in an armchair, become grumpy and drink a few beers.
Thanks very much to everybody for your patience and help. Well done, Vulcan.
There are only 5 pilots sufficiently qualified to fly a Vulcan today, and aviation regulations prohibit carrying any passengers. So there's only one way Guy can experience a working Vulcan. This is XM655. Although not in flying condition, it's preserved well enough to be able to taxi. Fast. Guy will be allowed to experience this from the cockpit, sitting alongside Wing Commander Mike Pollitt.
Right. Morning all. Morning. Welcome to our new student pilot, Guy Martin.
Yeah, that's me, boy, that's me.
Normally there's 4.5 months of solid ground school and then 4 or 5 trips before a co-pilot is let off on his first ever real go with his own crew. So this is going to be considerably compressed for your training today. Happy?
Yeah. Do you want to take off?
Do I?
Yeah.
She does. Yeah. I'd lose every licence possible, you know, and I'd be in court. And the Civil Aviation Authority would take me to the cleaners.
Would it be worth it?
Well, it would be with you on board, basically, you know.
These boys would like it. You know, I would love it.
The intention is to lose speed just before takeoff by using the wing as a giant air brake, which means Guy having to follow a very precise set of instructions.
You're going to sit in the right-hand seat.
Yes.
Which is the co-pilot's seat.
Okay.
We will show you a few of the switches that need to be made on the right-hand side. And I'm specifically going to point out the airspeed indicator.
Yes.
So that's going to hit 75 or 80 knots.
Right.
Okay. At that point, we'd close the throttles, pop the air brakes out, raise the nose, and that presents the wing to the airstream.
To slow it down?
Yeah, that produces form drag.
Okay.
That's known as, and that slows it down.
It's not just a case of jumping in and driving off.
Ejector seats.
In the back of the aircraft, there's a run-through of the same checklist that has been used to start the Vulcan ever since it entered service in 1956.
Happy? 100%. Right, when you put that up, you can switch the mic on.
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Barry, I think we're ready to do the internal checks, please. Okay, here we go then.
They treat it as seriously as a real flight.
Abandon aircraft switches. On. Off.
Because things could go seriously wrong.
If there's an engine fire,
yes,
you close the appropriate engine air switch.
Okay, yeah.
And then we'll hastily get out of the aircraft.
Okay, hastily, yeah, I like that.
There are 45 minutes of checks.
Clear the systems checks, Eric. Clear the system. Right, my friend. You can do this. Yes.
Guy checks the controls for full and free movement.
Just take it to the extremes in each direction. No resistance? No. No. All the way around. No problem. Fantastic.
With systems checks complete, they can start the engine.
Have you started a jet engine before? No, definitely not. Good, thank you, no. Good God, this is going to be an honour to teach you how to start an engine. No, never. Never. Very clear start 4. Clear 4. Lighting up now. There she goes. Clear 3. Clear 3. That's got it. Open her up. Yep. Fabulous.
shut 3, open 2. Well done. Clear 2. Clear 2. 7, you can move her forward into the gate.
Okay.
So, yeah, you're doing it by feel. Fantastic. Well done. You've started your first jet engine. You're clear to remove the chocks, and everybody clear, please.
Finally, nearly an hour after climbing on board, 655 is ready to taxi.
Just going to get clearance on the radio.
Okie dokie. We are clear to move. Just asking if I'm clear to enter the main runway.
You're clear.
Ah.
655 lines up at the end of the runway.
Put your hand on the stick. That's my boy.
Guy is cleared to run. Guy Martin is at the helm of the most powerful machine he's ever sat in, a Vulcan bomber.
This is the ASI, the speed indicator. Keep half an eye on that.
It has 80,000 pounds of thrust, twice that of a typical airliner.
If you notice anything untoward, you let me know.
Only briefly taxiing at full power is permitted, but it will take all of Guy's concentration to help Wing Commander Mike Pollitt keep the Vulcan on the ground.
Is everybody happy?
Thumbs up in the back, no problems.
And we've been cleared to go. Okay.
The engines are brought up to power.
5 seconds. Go.
She's got some lift.
50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75.
At 90 miles per hour, they pull back on the stick hard to try and slow down. The nose soars. Just before takeoff, they slam the nose down.
I think that was a little bit more than a wheel.
The air brakes are deployed. They stamp on the wheel brakes and bring the 70-ton bomber to a halt.
You relax now.
Not a lot of room for error. I can hardly read the speed off fast enough. That's some acceleration there.
Guy's experience doesn't end there.
You have control.
Thank you.
Britain's newest co-pilot is entrusted with taxiing this priceless aircraft back to base.
You've got the rudders, and the nose wheel steering, and the throttles.
The handbrake's still on.
Yep, brakes off. Yeah, you can give it a bit of power. And always check to the side. That gives you a feeling of the speed as well as checking that your wing tip is clearing any obstacles.
So about 20 miles an hour, you think?
More like 30 now. Almost as good as driving a Scania, isn't it?
It is the same, just the same.
Watch this camera we've got somewhere on the centre line. So keep a little bit to the right, Guy.
Okay. Just a little bit tense.
It's busy. Don't do anything for my blood pressure.
I think you do well to be sitting there with your arms crossed. Have another aspirin, Mike.
Thank you very much. Just bring around gradually what I say to the right now. Well done.
A bit nervous.
Oh, that was pretty good.
A 70-ton Vulcan.
Oh, he's a natural at it.
Okay, stop.
Yeah, okay, brakes applied.
Fantastic.
Engine anti-sync.
Off. Can you close 1 and 4, please, Guy? That's the outers.
That's those shut now.
Yep. Close 2 and 3, please, Guy. Fantastic. Well done. That was slick. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.
So what's the captain's opinion on the newest recruit to a Vulcan squadron?
He was good. He was really good. I'd say, you know, if we did that 3 or 4 times more, I'd let him do the next one himself. Really that. Very, very good.
I'm sure that wasn't it. I need to watch that back on the camera. That must have been nearly a takeoff. Hey?
Certainly, it was abrupt enough to get the first set of main bogies off. We were pushing the limit. Actually, I think you're wasted as a motorcyclist. You should have been one of us.
Vulcan pilots were always rigorously trained, but it looked like they or their aircraft were never going to see combat action. With nuclear deterrent responsibilities having passed to stealthy Polaris submarines, by 1982, the Vulcan's time was nearly up. Then, just 3 months before retirement, the tired old bomber was finally called into action.
For the first time for many years, British sovereign territory has been invaded by a foreign power.
Argentina had invaded the Falkland Islands. Their tanks were on the streets, and their aircraft had captured the key strategic location of Port Stanley Airfield.
The House meets this Saturday to respond to a situation of great gravity.
Britain wanted to take out the runway, so it couldn't be used by Argentina's fast jets. But the challenge was using conventional bombs to hit a target just 40 meters wide that was 8,000 miles from home. Even launching the attack from the halfway point at a base on Ascension Island still meant this would be the longest bombing raid in British military history.
We just did not see how we could possibly achieve it. Thought it was a one-way ticket.
Nevertheless, at 11 p.m. on the 30th of April 1982, Operation Black Buck took off from Ascension. The first difficulty was navigation and actually trying to find the small cluster of Falkland Islands in the vast featureless Atlantic.
We're away from any coastline, so we can't use our radar. So we went for a long period where we really didn't know where we were, apart from we knew, of course, we were heading south.
While the stars in the night sky offered some guidance, trying to find the target was going to depend on something else.
We just had to rely on that great thing, which is luck.
There was another vital piece of equipment the 16-hour round trip would depend on.
If you're in here for 16 hours, you are going to the loo, aren't you? I think number 2's out of the question. But you're going to need a number 1, aren't you? You're going to need a wee-wee. You're going to need a wee-wee, and that's what they had. You put the little fella into there. You see, look, you see. Smells a bit fruity. Let's have a wee-wee. And you fill the bag, a bit of a bladder. That's it. That's as simple as that. That's what you have to do. Get on with the job.
The Vulcan would need more than 30,000 gallons of fuel to complete the mission, but its tanks could only carry 9,000 gallons. The only way to get fuel that far from home was with a relay of 11 airborne tankers and a bafflingly complicated in-flight refueling plan.
I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. I didn't really understand it, couldn't follow it. But luckily, I had Dick Russell on my right shoulder, and I turned to him and said, "Do you understand that, Dick?" And he said, "Yes." So, thank goodness for that.
Refuelling is very, very tricky. The object is to, with small throttle movements, you gradually edge up to put your probe in the basket of the hose. Easier said than done.
The pilot's explanation for in-flight refuelling was, it's like trying to put a piece of wet spaghetti up a cat's backside.
You sweat, not half sometimes. Sometimes you'll run into turbulence, which will make it even more difficult. It is stressful.
I know there's so much that could go wrong. I mean, if you speared that into the back of the plane in front, he's probably going to come down. That's going to break off. That's going to go in your engine. You're probably going to come down. Yeah, it could get messy, but then we like a bit of risk.
And they didn't just have to refuel once. They had to refuel 7 times. But after the final top-up, the crew realised they'd been left short. The original calculations hadn't taken into account the increased fuel consumption of constant changes in speed and altitude during each refuel. They were now beyond the range of any other tanker. If they continued the mission, they'd be unlikely to make it home.
Martin thought about it. I can hear him now. He said, I haven't come all this way to go back.
I was absolutely determined that we just had to go on with this attack.
Running into the target at 400 miles per hour, the bombing computer was switched on. A 1940s clockwork calculator that worked out the bombs should be released from 2 miles away.
It is genuinely mechanical.
The forward throw should carry the bombs to target.
Mind-blowing.
The mission's success now fell to Bob Wright.
It's a matter of pressing the button so the bombs start falling off the aircraft. The equipment is showing you how many have gone. You can hear them coming off. Finally, the counter gets to 21. I said, bomb's gone.
Gone and done the job. Let's get out. Let's get away, half Andy. Let's get away. Let's be on it. Give her the berries. On the throttle. Turn right. We're going back home. Out of a load of 20-odd £1,000 bombs, only one hit the runway, but that was enough to put the runway out of commission for fast jets. So the job was done. The Argentinians did not know what had hit them. They was not expecting a Vulcan to come all the way from England.
Now the crew had to get home. The original idea had been to escape at low level to avoid enemy radar.
By abandoning that little bit of the plan and just climbing up to high level, we knew we could save some fuel.
It worked. With less drag in thinner air, they saved just enough to make it to the final Victor tanker.
The Victor rolled out right in front of us, half a mile in front of us. Lovely sight, lovely sight.
It was a remarkable feat. 6 more Black Buck missions were attempted, but only the original was considered a success. And today, 33 years after its finest hour, the last flying Vulcan is about to say goodbye for the final time. It's time for the last Flying Vulcan's farewell tour of Britain. But after months of planning, the whole event may have to be cancelled due to thick fog.
Can you see? Can you see out there? No, you can't. That's the problem. You can't.
Hoping for the best, the team decide to prepare their beloved aircraft for flight anyway. It's 4 months since Guy first joined the ground crew to help them work on this iconic machine.
What will get me is what it means to these boys, and when it starts to hit them, it's going to be emotional.
Yeah, it's like a friend. Feels sick. All the memories of the thing.
What's this going to mean to you when it packs up like?
There's a bit of all of us on that, and that's the thing. We'll be upset when it dies.
Tad emotional.
Yeah.
I'll say that much, yeah.
Only Crew Chief Taff seems to be keeping a cool head.
No. Just good at hiding it.
There are 3 hours of pre-flight servicing to carry out. The pneumatic systems are replenished.
Anyone thought he'd done this before? Come.
The tyre pressures are checked. And 558 is filled up with fuel.
Sorry, mate, where do you want us?
Right. Turn it clockwise, that locks.
It takes 40 minutes and costs £24,000. An hour before the scheduled takeoff, the fog begins to clear. 558 can be handed over to her pilots.
What's the plane mean to you?
Well, it's about the 63rd time I've flown it in the last 5 years, so it's got a place in my heart. And it's just, you know, I know you like machinery and the technology in it. the more you learn about it, the more fantastic the design was. So yes, we'll miss it.
Captain Bill Perrins runs Guy through the mission.
We're going to go whoosh across to just west of Harrogate.
Yeah.
And then up toward Newcastle Airport.
Oh, yeah, you are having a ride.
Yeah, and then all the way up the northeast coast, just to the east of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And down through the Lake District, which is going to look lovely today. Shouldn't be too bumpy.
How low are you going to go over here? 500 foot?
501 feet. And then...
I like the man's precision.
And then we're going to fly...
Over Woodford.
Over Woodford. The airplane was born at Woodford.
Yes.
Nottingham, Derby, and then back here and land. And that's that.
My word.
Last time ever. Very sad. So we need to get in the airplane and go flying.
You go for your life.
Doncaster Tower, Vulcan. Doncaster, good afternoon. Request engine start.
Engines turning, light up. Everybody happy?
Good taxi.
Okay, just waiting for Tarleton's magic wave. There he is.
It's happening.
I'll be happy when she takes off, because then I know we've all done our job properly.
.558 is about to start her most ambitious tour ever, where she'll cover a total of more than 1,000 miles.
And off. Rotate. And here, up.
I got a bit of a shiver on, man. I got a bit of a shiver on, man.
It brings a funny emotion, actually. There'll be people around the country now who will be seeing this for the last time, so it's a funny old moment.
Rear crew member Phil Davis makes sure the epic tour is flown with military precision.
Okay, we're 5 seconds late now on our planned time.
Okay.
The first landmark is the Cold War radar station at Menwith Hill. Fans with camera phones are at every turn.
Oh, brilliant! There's a lot of people here, actually. Yeah, the roads are jammed.
Flying above the Yorkshire Dales at 250 miles per hour, the Vulcan soon reaches the River Tyne and is cleared to fly over the centre of Newcastle.
Thank you very much. A lot of happy buddies down here.
1 hour after takeoff, they reach the Firth of Forth and Edinburgh's famous hill, King Arthur's Seat.
It's quite a spectacular looking city from here.
It is, isn't it? It's remarkable.
Mm.
The question is, how long is it going to be before I have to eat that sandwich?
Don't you normally have pies?
With more than 50 locations to visit, the last flying Vulcan was getting the send-off she deserved.
The Vulcan was something special. There's nothing like it left.
There's not going to be a dry eye in the house, I can guarantee that, and certainly not in my head.
To see 558 finish flying is going to be a sad loss to me.
I'll always remember it with huge affection. It was, to me, the best aircraft in the world. I loved it.
He's flying beautifully. This is what's so sad.
It's going to be mourned.
The tour was a magnificent success, with 300,000 spectators turning out.
General Concorde final flight didn't get this at all. No, I don't think it did it? I was there.
The Lake District saw huge crowds on the shores of Windermere.
Oh yeah, I can see it now, right in front.
There's a whole bunch of people waving flags. Beautiful.
She flew past Manchester in its police helicopter and onto Woodford near Stockport, once home to the factory where all the Vulcans were designed, built and first flew.
Okay, a bit noise as you go past. Keep a blast.
She went on to complete a tour of the south as well, taking in the Severn Bridge, the White Cliffs of Dover and the Thames Estuary, before finally returning to Doncaster, where XH-558, the spirit of Great Britain, will live on the ground forevermore.
I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you learned something.
I've learnt a lot.
Well, it's mega, isn't it? So designed over here, built over here, and then eventually it was restored over here. What an achievement.
Keep him coming, keep him coming, keep him coming.
That's Guy Martin, is actually.
I was pretty nervous when I was lollipopping it back. It's a lot of plane coming towards you, that. Hey, there's only going to be one winner.
Good marshalling there.
Marvellous marshalling.
It's been a massive experience. Met a lot of interesting people, a lot of people with a lot of passion about this plane, and that's made it great.
I hope you filled your boots, because that's it. That's it. She's never going again.
For more footage of the Vulcan in flight, watch videos online at channel4.com/Guy Martin. Now tomorrow, what does it take to get luxury at 100 miles an hour all aboard the world's most famous train at 8? Next tonight, there's shocks, there's revelations, there's twists, there's turns, and there's a lovely couple of wigs too. Homeland, coming up.